Macy's and Girl Scout day camp too.
How do you make a sit-a-pon?
You just get a
We actually use tablecloth.
Okay.
table, tape, and
Bands.
that.
Okay.
We made these little corn patches. The day that we learned about the food, we made little corn.
Carter, you want to tell them what your favorite part was?
My favorite part of camp is probably the day we made the instruments because it was challenging but fun.
What was your instrument, Carter?
The synth.
Now, did you have stories when you had your musical instruments? Like when you go to a Native American powwow, they tell a story through their song? Is that what you incorporated that as well?
On some of the instruments, the younger kids actually, when they decorated the outside of the instrument with paper, they actually used pictures or hieroglyphics that represented things they had learned that week. And that wasn't from our prompting, that was, they did that independently, so we were really pleased to see that.
And then they gave every kid a pencil that actually is made out of wood, which is how the Native Americans would have wrote.
So there's no lead in there?
No, there is.
There is lead.
There is actually
Yeah.
a small
To make a center.
But it's a stick.
Yeah, lead in it.
But by the end of the week, we had it all used down, so we could barely get it anymore.
So you had, every day you had to say what you learned. Today I learned. Okay, now Carter, Amelia. When looking back at this, it looks like a lot of fun. What did you learn from this experience? Just briefly, just a one-sentence summary. What did you learn? Like today I learned, what did you learn?
The day that we did the food, I learned what the Native Americans ate. Like, they ate jerky and corn, and they made cornbread, and they would go out and pick strawberries and blueberries from the strawberry and blueberry vines.
Good. Carter?
I found out how they entertain themselves with music
Oh, really?
and kind of easy to make instruments.
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. Thank you. Dreamcatcher.
Okay. So we measured our true success on this on our last day. We had several students walking up to us requesting us to do it the following week, to do it next year, and they were actually giving us topics that they want. We have around the world, they want to go around the world in a week, and the other one was archaeology. Can we do something with archaeology? So we know, we feel like we've been successful. The staff is already talking about what weeks everybody can participate next year, and hopefully we'll be able to service even more students.
Thank you for doing that.
Thank
so
you for
much.
having us.
Amelia, what grade are you in?
Fifth.
What grade are you in? Cameron? Okay.
And they had 2 different times, a morning and afternoon time, from 8:45.
We just ran in the morning.
Oh, you just ran in the morning?
We ran in the morning because we didn't want to have to worry with the heat in the afternoon because we were out in the sun.
Is it possible for some of the students who attended this year to come back next year and help with the younger students that may be going to middle school?
And we kind of talked about doing that this past year, as having some junior camp leaders, but because it was our first year and we didn't know what we were really in for, we decided that we would just not focus on that just yet, but it was a huge conversation that, because we do bring the middle schoolers back so much and we use them as pure help in any aspect we can, we've talked about doing junior campers that would come back in and work with them as well.
I see 2 that it would be really good.
Oh yeah, without a doubt.
There were a lot more 5th graders. Like, how they did it was the kindergartners going into 1st grade, and like the little E5s, like they did it how if you were leaving a grade and going in, they did it going into another grade. So we had some kids from 3rd grade going into 4th grade in our group, and me and Carter were going into 5th grade.
Do you have any suggestions for next year? Other than the topic, is there something that comes to your mind that would make it a little better?
Not really, but I think they could make it better by, I actually don't really know, but maybe next year we could design the teepees on how. That's one way we could make it better, like design the teepees and how we design the mini ones.
I think they could make like every group do like a banner, because our group was the Potawatomi tribe, and we all did we just did a banner. None of the other guys did a banner. I think that staff maybe could design a banner for the two younger groups, and then the older groups can make their own.
Good idea.
Well taken. Can you tell who our engineer is?
Yes. Well, thank you so much for sharing this with us tonight. Looks like you had fun, and I hope you do get a chance to come back and help with the younger students. And share with others how much fun you did have, even if you can't come back next
Some
year.
kids, like I was telling them about it this year, and they're like, "Well, that would just be a waste of my summer time." But it wasn't a whole week. It was just 5 days.
And Amy and Michelle, thank you too.
Well,
And
thank
all
you.
the staff.
Thank you.
We thoroughly enjoyed it. The
Appreciate
staff,
that.
I can't tell you how excited the staff was, and to work with our students on in that different learning environment. You're with them on a whole different level, and you get to know them in a different way. And the staff responded so well to it. It was really exciting. We have a lot wanting to participate next year. So.
Well, thank you for all your time and energy, and Patty, you as well, and everybody that was involved with it. Please pass on our thanks.
I will.
And you're all more than welcome to stay for the entirety of the board meeting, but at this time, if you'd like to,
We're all going home.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And that will be it for the superintendent's report.
Okay, you didn't have any board subcommittee reports for this meeting. On your informational items, there were no questions to the superintendent.
The only thing that I would say on the board subcommittee reports is that we typically would have a opportunity for the IART meetings for the audit review team, and we're going to move that to our next meeting. So next month we'll actually have 2 reports.
Okay.
It'll just be, this one was delayed a little bit, so we'll have that meeting for our next, and then we will also have in the second meeting in October the October report.
Okay, good. All right, so for informational items, there were no questions to the board and superintendent from the previous meeting. We do have employment of non-certified staff on your e-board and Schedule B employment for your information. Any questions?
I do have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
The peer counseling, do they work with Peers Who Care, or what, is that a separate thing, separate position?
Yeah, so Peers Who Care was a, prior to this, was actually a position that was held by another staff member. And so this is actually being shared out between the counseling department at this time. So they're taking on that responsibility. And overseeing that program, we have Threads up there, which is a part of that, and some of those other activities that the counselors are overseeing.
So the 3 are taking the 1?
Correct.
Okay.
It's not 3 separate. It's all, they're splitting that between the 3 of them.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question.
And then on the intramural director at the middle school, we have 2, and they're both at 100%. Is that grades or?
So there is actually 2 times throughout the year. So there's a fall, beginning winter, I believe, and a end of winter, second half of the year. So they split the year in half.
So basically, they're each going to do a semester.
Correct. Exactly. Yep.
Any other questions?
I can say on the Schedule B conversation that that's something that we are constantly having conversations about with the SCEA, and just talking about the best way to manage that. Because it's not a lot of money, but it's something that you got some programs that take a lot of time and energy, and people are spending a lot of hours after school time, and so just trying to figure out how that goes. We're in constant conversations with them about that.
I think it's nice to see that all of the classes have several sponsors. I know that's not always easy to do, so I know that makes it a lot easier for them and for the parents that are working with them. So it's good to see too. Any other questions? Okay, going on, we have board discussion items, the superintendent evaluation training.
So this has been kind of a saga. I sent you an email, but so I talked with Mr. Hartley, and essentially some of his board members, when they looked at the cost of the training, which is minimal, it's $500 for the cost, and I still think it would have been nice to split it. They have a couple other things that they're working on relative to their own internal things that they're doing as a district, and so they contract with Collins and Blaha as their district attorneys anyway. So that's the long story to basically say they have a lot of individual things and they'd prefer to kind of do that on their own. So now we're back to the drawing board, and it's not the end of the world. It's just we'll need to schedule them to come out. It's a 2.5-hour training, and we can pick when we do that. So I guess you don't have to tell me tonight unless you want to. If you could maybe get me 3 to 5 dates that work for you, I can try and coordinate that.
Are we looking at October?
I would be looking into October or November. I would say beginning half of November at the latest. Yeah,
Well, we
because
have our- yeah, 'cause we have
because
our
the
seminar
actual
in
evaluation
November.
the actual evaluation will take place in December. So we're going to want to.
But there's only one meeting. So
Correct.
we're actually gonna have to have it done in
Right.
November,
Oh, for absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
remember.
because it'll be at the December meeting.
Yeah.
Correct.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
So we should shoot for
better
the
look at
first week of
October.
November or the
Yeah.
third, we better look at October, because
Yeah.
we have our conference and
So-
we're skipping that board meeting.
That's up to you as a team on whether or not you'd like to do it something during the day. If you'd like to do something in the evening, we can make it flexible.
Yeah.
Anything evening, I'm good for.
Me too.
I'm with Tony.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jason.
What's that?
I'm with you guys.
Yeah, any
Yeah, for
evening
sure.
is good.
I don't think that. It's easier.
I'm flexible.
Thursdays would be the only day for me that would be a challenge.
Okay,
So-
so we won't do Thursday.
Yeah.
Me too, but I work late, so that's why we kind of matters.
So would it be acceptable for you to look at your calendars and send me, let's just shoot for 4 dates in October that you would find feasible? We'll shoot for the evening, that's kind of what I'm hearing, and then I'll try and find
Can
consensus.
anybody look, she's got her calendar, I got my book, you wanna look right now?
I'm pretty,
We can-
yeah, I'm pretty flexible besides board meetings and the third Monday of every month. Remember my only that I know I'm tied up.
Okay.
Tuesdays are really good for me. Are
So-
Tuesdays good for anybody else?
Doesn't matter to me.
We have nothing on Tuesdays.
Is
in
that okay with
October.
you? It's only not
Okay, so we might have it narrowed down to a Tuesday.
I can't do the 17th
Okay.
on Tuesday, but I can do all the
24th
other
or the
days.
10th?
Let's pick 2 Tuesdays and then we can look at calendars and make sure.
Okay, do you
Yeah,
wanna
do
shoot the,
Scratch the 17th.
what,
About the 10th.
do you wanna shoot the 10th?
The 10th, and let's pick another one. Let's pick 2.
Okay,
24th would be.
24th,
Okay.
alright.
10th and 24th.
10th and 24th?
Yeah.
Okay. I will work
And
on,
then Joan can fire something out at us.
Yep.
They're both good
Yep.
for
I
me.
cannot do the 24th.
You can't?
Okay.
Okay, so scratch the 24th.
So
Okay,
10th and the
Kind of,
3rd?
sounds like the 10th and the
10th,
3rd.
let's see.
10th looks good.
okay, the 10th.
Sounds good.
Let me just make sure.
I'll
on
see
my
if we can
other
get
one.
them here on the 10th, and if by chance I need a backup,
Yep.
is there another date?
31st? Well, that's,
Halloween. Don't
Sure,
be doing
yes.
that.
you'd rather be here than handing out candy?
Me neither.
So, yeah.
Mondays would be fine, I don't know what Mondays look like.
I can
Yours,
just-
I just can't do the 3rd one. I can do all the rest of them.
Mondays are all
I-
open for me.
I teach Bible study, but I can change
That's
it.
at
There
10
we go.
o'clock.
I can
Fine,
change my.
So right now, we're looking at
October
10:10?
30th? We'd
Yeah.
rather do it at the beginning of the month so that we can kind of look at what we're doing.
Yeah.
That's true.
The sooner the better.
Yeah.
Did you say you can't
October,
do the 3rd?
what about October 16th? Oh no,
Or
that's
you
the
can't?
3rd one.
Oh.
What about October 9th?
What's the second one did we pick?
10th.
Oh, that's
9th or
it.
10th?
9th or 10th, yeah.
Oh,
The 9th is, you have an IR meeting at 2 o'clock,
Like
but
it's-
that's not gonna interfere
No,
with.
that don't
night.
matter. No,
what time are we looking
And
at
then as
night?
a
Like
third
7?
backup, what about the 23rd?
I'm sorry.
The 23rd of,
Sure.
that's the 4th.
Okay, so the 9th, the 10th, and the 23rd?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
All right, I will look into those dates, and then I'll ask that Joan be in
Did you say what
contact.
time? I'm sorry.
We would probably want to go around 6 o'clock.
23rd or
Okay.
23rd?
If we
Sorry,
did,
23rd.
Okay.
if we did the 9.
6 o'clock, you guys.
That's
He's
our
looking at.
time to be that meeting. We could start it whenever Ken got on board, or Gary could.
We could go maybe earlier on the 9th.
Yeah, we have that meeting on, we have that meeting on the 9th at 2.
Is earlier on that day other than whenever you.
I don't care.
What about for you on the 9th?
Earlier as in what day?
Well, by the time probably 5
Well,
o'clock,
probably,
4 o'clock.
yeah, 4 or 5 is the earliest. 4 is gonna be the earliest I get free.
4:30.
And but Carrie's
Probably, I have to be in Southfield that day till 3, so I probably wouldn't be up for
4:30,
5.
4:35.
4:35.
Yeah, 'cause she'll be in the car,
Yeah.
the idiot 500.
Do you want to say
coming
5 so you're
home.
safe, Carrie? Or 4:30 will be all right? 5?
5 o'clock would be
That's
better.
Gary pushing traffic.
Yeah, she'll be cutting the idiot 500.
Yeah.
5 o'clock.
And I'm not gonna write that down until Joan lets us.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're kind of saying 5 o'clock on the 9th, or the 10th at
Or it's the 10th at 6, or the 23rd at 6.
Okay.
Okay,
Not all 3, just one of those 3.
okay.
We could do
Okay.
5 all those days, I don't care.
All right, good.
We could go 5 all those days if we wanted.
Doesn't
Oh,
matter.
okay.
Yeah, that's fine with me too.
The other piece here is just any questions on the board policy for video retention. A few board meetings ago, you had asked to put that in place. We did our first reading. This would be second reading and approval. Just want to make sure there wasn't any conversations or adjustments before we vote on it.
Is that working better for Joan?
Great.
She said, with an exclamation point.
Yes.
So any questions on
Oh, I was
the
good with it.
video retention approval? So with that, I think we're ready for a vote,
Yep.
correct? Oh, we don't have to.
As
but-
presented.
As presented,
Yeah,
so
you'll
why don't
do
we
that.
do that, why don't we do that in our?
You wanna do that under 9 and finish B?
Yeah,
eight?
yeah, let's do the Mary Craig part.
Okay, so this one is gonna be a little interesting, this conversation. So,
What?
one of the things that we're running into with the Mary Crapo building is, while it has a lot of really neat character and historical significance, every time we go to do something in that building, it is extensively costly. We just got word, Dave and I were talking last week, we had a fire inspection that was scheduled. We were asked to do quite a few things, so we're complying. We had to replace the water heaters. We had to take down bulletin boards. We had to replace some doors. We had to do X, Y, and Z, a lot of different things. There's a whole list of things that we had to do from the fire inspector. Obviously, because of the fact that it's a daycare facility, there are actually higher standards than even for a regular school building, and it's the oldest building in the district. So we're running into a little bit of a dilemma. The big dilemma that just came out is that we need to install a new fire alarm system, and the early projections are tens of thousands of dollars for this. So my concern, and I just want to have a conversation, kind of open conversation, is at some point I believe that we need to draw the line in the sand and say we cannot continue to put money into a building that's going to consistently need more work. Every time there's a plumbing issue, we have cast iron, we have these types of things that are going on. So I'm not suggesting or coming with an alternative to say that we have the ability to just not use the building, because we do use the building for a lot of important functions. However, I guess what I'd like to do is get some guidance from the board on, would we like to start, I do have a phone call, and although I haven't got a call back on, there is a company that they do sometimes purchase old school buildings and use them for senior type apartments and senior living spaces. There's also a lot of other things that have been brought up. For example, the Crapo building was donated, and so there's got to be something that goes back to the family. I haven't been able to locate that document, nor would I know where to find it, but it's something we would have to look into. I guess what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is, when do we want to is the vision from the board continue to keep that building and use it as much as we can, and continue to bring it up to code as much as physically possible, or is it let's start looking at an exit strategy, and as we start thinking about where our CDC and academy could be meeting, are there other options around the district? I have some ideas, but I really wanted to have that conversation tonight because that gives me some guidance on how aggressive I get on trying to look at different alternatives.
When we talked about this before last year, we talked about putting the academy in one of the wings of the middle school.
We did.
That's definitely a feasible
We
idea.
sure did. And it was away from, it was.
And part of what prompted the conversation was I had my first meetings with the architects who were going through the facility study. And their eyes were this big when they came out of the building because there's so many things. They said to bring it up to code is, so we will get the official report later this fall from them, but there's a litany of things that would be very, very costly to do in that building if we were to truly bring it up to standard.
What's that asbestos situation?
As far as I know, I don't have a good answer for you on that. I don't know that, but I believe that'll be in their report. But you know, everything from the plumbing to the access for ADA to the insulation factors, all of those things are very costly.
Now, how many children do we have there in the program?
We have a couple hundred kids over there between the two programs.
Do you have ideas where you would?
Well, Michael just brought up a point that we have some buildings like our middle school where we could look at possibly look at different spaces. The other option is looking at a place like, for example, where the Cage property is, and you've probably seen some of the low-cost buildings. They oftentimes are senior centers, but they're single-story, lower pitched roof, and you actually have a freestanding, fairly low-cost facility that you use for daycare type of situations. In order to get to that point, we would probably have to have a discussion on what we were going to do with the Mary Crapel building and find out. That would be a financial issue.
Sure.
But there's there's certainly other possibilities at the Cage and things like that. But I think at some point we have to have an open and honest conversation about the fact that the building is it's a beautiful historical building, especially on the outside. But when we start getting into it from a functionality perspective, it is quite a costly building to operate and certainly costly to repair.
Is there a timeline for compliance with the fire department?
Yes, but in our conversations with them, they said as long as you're, for example, our maintenance guys are putting in it's a temporary solution, but they're putting in all fire alarms in every room. So they're getting the battery operated fire alarm system, they're putting those in all of the rooms. That's not a permanent solution, but it's something that the inspector is essentially saying you're making strides to do what you need to do, and that's a good temporary solution. The initial report said that they wanted it done this year, but they also had indicated that as long as we were working with them, that they would, obviously keep us open, and they said that we could comply with those standards over time. So, but it's not going to be 3, 4, 5 years down the road. They're going to expect something to be done. So that would probably mean this next summer, at the absolute latest, installing a brand new fire alarm and suppression system.
Do we have an idea on cost of, and are there wireless systems out there where that would work?
The only gauge I had was we just did one at Gaines, and it was extremely expensive. Tens of thousands of dollars, and I don't want to misquote, so I don't want to say a particular number, but it was very costly. So I would imagine that the Mary Crapel building would be actually significantly more costly than what Gaines was. There are two main vendors that do that. Sonatrol is one of them, and Simplex, I believe, is the other one. So
I'd like to know also, as we go through this, if they do have wireless systems. I mean, that would be so nice not to put that infrastructure in.
Sure.
So if we pretend that we don't have a CDC and families that rely on a place to take their children, where would we put it
for the convenience of the families within the community and outside of the community.
Mhm.
So pretend you don't have the building to be concerned about the upkeep or the upgrades. And if you look at, yes, do we want to keep a program like that? It brings students to the district, it feeds some of our programs.
Yep.
Where would you envision it going?
I don't have all of those worked out in my head yet, but one possibility, as I've already said, is at the Cage, we have one classroom there. We could expand. You could add on to that building at that site. You could have a location behind. You could find another elementary school where we could consolidate classrooms. But the Cage is probably the easiest accessibility. But you have other buildings that we could look at, you know, their classroom spaces. Now, Deke is, for example, a building that isn't at full capacity. But when you go, and Gaines is not at full capacity, but when you look at those two buildings, they're not exactly centrally located for people to get to very quickly. And that's the nice thing about Mary Crapo, is it is in the center of our town, and it's pretty easy to get to. Although, for purposes of transportation, the Cage property is pretty close. But before we would be able to get into that, we'd have to talk about a lot of other unanswered questions, such as what would the cost be and those types of things. But this is just kind of the preliminary discussion to say, I'd like to get some guidance on where your thoughts are on, we're keeping that building running and we want that thing forever, or we need to start looking at what other alternatives are out there.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
We just kind of looked at each other in a way. I think we have the same thought. I don't like a daycare with a basketball thing. I mean, on the outside of it, like you were talking, I like that idea more than I like it. I think inside there, it's just, I don't know. I don't care for that.
Were you going to say something?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
The people that are possibly interested in purchasing the property, do they want all of the property? Could we get away with just selling the building and enough for parking spaces or whatever, where we would keep the back and could do something with that ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great alternative. I think that those are all things that we can start exploring and then having those conversations, particularly at building and site and then at the broader board level. But it's more just about figuring out what the direction is, if you're ready for me to start looking at alternatives, or we want this thing, no matter what, we're going to keep it open no matter what the cost is. So
I can tell you that Len Thomas from the Historical Society is in contact with several members of the Crapo family, and he was instrumental in bringing them back. I don't know if it was this past summer or the summer before, for a ceremony that we had going on. So he has numbers, and maybe if you got them, you'd have a direct line to them, and maybe even if that's in there, they wouldn't be interested in the property at all. They don't live in state.
Okay.
Brian's hitting the nail on the head. Let's find out what the fire suppression deal is going to cost. The other part of it is, excluding this year, I think the 3 previous years, I know the 2 previous years, we've crammed over $500,000 in that building. There's windows on 3 sides of it, and
2 boilers.
That I was completely against. There's new boilers. So you've already made a $500,000 commitment. If a fire system costs $20,000, it's almost meaningless. I don't think a daycare facility at the Cage is a great idea, for the fact that we have a ton of high school and middle school students that run through that building. There's only one bathroom. It's a public bathroom. So are you going to tell the kids or the parents or whoever's there, hey, you can't use the bathroom, we have little kids in there? Or are you going to take adults and a bunch of high school kids, not that there's anything wrong with high school kids, but throw them in a locker room situation, because that's what that is, when you have a bunch of 3-year-olds and 5-year-olds trying to use the bathroom? Just not realistic. We've already had this argument. You weren't here for it to appreciate it, but we've had it. It don't work. There's one bathroom there. And then the other, as far as building something, I'm not against it, but I'd like to see on paper where we have the money for it, because if you look right now, we're sitting at about $450,000, $500,000 a year to maintain every building in this district. I don't know how we can afford another payment. So I you know, Mary Crapo is back to where I went to school in Flint. Those buildings are worthless and useless. They're outdated. They're worth nothing. You're not going to sell that to anybody. You know, if you are, you're not going to sell it for enough to matter. Not like you're going to get $1 million for that building. So, you know, I was opposed to fixing it up. We were fixing it up, but now we fixed it up with the tune of over probably right around $500,000. You can dig it out and find out, but I'm pretty close. So, you had to put $20,000 more in it. I don't see that being a big deal because you're not going to build a building for $20,000. And you know, I mean, it's just I'm sitting here scratching my head as you brought it up.
I don't think $20,000 putting an alarm system in it is gonna be the end of it.
No,
I think it's,
I agree with
that's
Mike.
only
At some
the
point,
beginning.
At some point, you gotta,
but what do you?
It's gonna go on and on.
yeah.
So if you build another structure, how are you going to pay for it?
I'd like to see the site survey,
That's right.
because it's going back to what you said, why we got the site survey, because I don't think anybody is qualified to structurally evaluate a building or anything. I'd like to see what the site survey comes out with.
To what the building is worth or what its issues are?
Issues.
No,
The facility
you're talking about the
Yeah, the
facility
facilities,
study.
yeah.
That's
Oh.
coming out next month, right?
In November.
November.
Then we can sit down and truly, because right now everyone's just speculating.
Correct, but I think it's important to start the conversation to say, you know, we have strong, it sounds like we kind of have some mixed opinions, but, you know, I think the idea is either we're going to try and, we're all in and we're going forward, and I think you are correct. I happen to know that we have spent a lot of money on windows and things like that, particularly on the daycare side. But, you know, at some point, I think the question just has to be asked: at what point do you cut bait, or do we just say we're invested in this? This is what it's going to be for you know the long term.
I think we're foolish to put another dime in it. But
I
I don't know what you do otherwise.
I agree with Mike. Fire system now, it's just going to continue to roll. It just is the plumbing. Like I said, you can't even connect to the plumbing if you got a.
Absolutely. I wanted to get rid of it 3 or 4 years ago. The point of it is now is we don't have money to build another structure. So
Right,
if
that's
we
what I'm
want to
saying.
use other classrooms and other buildings, that'll work.
Let's see what the.
I think that'll be a good thing to tell us some things, and I just want it to be on your minds so that you can have those thoughts and conversations, so that you'll be prepared to kind of think through not only your own ideas, but as you talk with people in the community and what your opinions are going to be. That's going to be coming to a head here soon, and I'm going to just continue to ask you for some guidance, and I'll come with some maybe more specific ideas of what we could do, and I'll do some legwork on that, but I just want to bring that to the forefront. I know you've had certain conversations about it in the past. It's not my purpose or intent to dig up that. It's more to just say we have a situation that we have to address. It is going to be a costly one, and we need to start thinking about, do we want to bite the bullet and just invest and stick it out, and maybe that's our only option, or do we want to look at a different plan?
When you bring that to us, something I'd like to see is I would like to see where we're at with the cage payment is actually quite minimal. But I'd like to see that, and I'd like to see what the PAC payment is, how much longer we have on it, and as that number decreases, how much more money that puts each year into what we have to spend on our buildings. Because I'm doing this from memory, but I think we have about 12 plus more years of being broke paying for the cage, or the PAC.
So. St. Mary's has got a school that I know they've been updating, new windows, air conditioning, that's sitting empty. Is there a lease? Could you lease that?
What did you say?
St. Mary's.
Weren't we told
Oh.
that they weren't interested last year?
I don't think they were interested at the time, but it wouldn't hurt to talk.
It's a year or two later.
Any and all ideas like that, that's why I'm bringing it to you. Any and all ideas that you've got, I will entertain those.
That's an empty school that they've been updating that hasn't sat vacant.
It's great.
That's a great location.
And that is, what, a quarter mile from the cage, right off the highway? That is
Very good
I
location.
just would be curious if we were ever going to try to pass a bond, could that be partly in that of something to do, or you wouldn't add that into that?
Well, what we would do in that situation is we would really need to look at what are the priorities and the needs, and what would we really be willing to ask for.
Sure.
And we're not really at that point yet, but once we get the facility study, I think that would be part of the
Would be a
conversation.
thought, okay.
Great.
And the other question you have to ask yourself, if you unload Mary Crapo, not this is a big issue, but again, it's another issue that you're going to combat if whoever takes it doesn't play nice with you, is that's very used baseball field. That's quote unquote the boys' second baseball diamond.
That's what Lorraine, that's why we'd have to keep.
Yeah, they use it all.
Okay, here's another idea, which I just said to Tony's kind of off the wall, but what happens if we auctioned off whatever you could from the building and then tore the building down? And then we would have
Big
the
money.
whole.
That's why all the old Flint schools are still standing. They don't tear them down because it'll break you to tear them down.
I know in Wall Lake, they have an old building like that. The school wants to tear down, but the city's suing the school because it's a historic building not to tear it down.
Drive
Just a
around,
thought.
drive around Flint, all them schools are
Yeah.
still standing because it's too expensive to tear them down.
Does that help you?
It is, yeah, it's very helpful. I just need to, I wanted to put it on your minds because we're gonna be faced with spending more money. So we have to know, do we wanna continue to spend money in that area or look at diverting it somehow and seeing what our options are? So, I can do some legwork.
Good, thank you.
I think there's a lot of bargaining. chips
Okay,
we have.
so moving on to board action items, we have before us the resolution for the video retention policy that we just discussed. I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Brian, Mike, any comments or questions? Hearing none, be it resolved that the Swartz Creek Community Schools Board of Education approve the second reading of policy 0168.3, board meeting video retention as presented. Any comments or questions? Already asked that. Everybody in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now we have an opportunity for those of you in the audience, if you'd like to address the board, please stand and state your name. Keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Can't see if there's-
No.
All right, going, gone. Okay, comments and questions from the board.
I do have a couple. Ben, I'd like, not gonna go into detail who and what, but in my travels from other school districts, you received some compliments. How wonderful you are again. Seriously, I don't mean that, there's not 1 ounce of sarcasm in that. You got some great things said about you. Something I would like us to look at, through the rumor mill, I've been hearing there may be some expanding of the Metro League. And a team that I believe, or a district I should say, school district that's asked to be in it and has been shot down. And I have no ties to this place. I despised them when I was a kid, even though my mother wanted me to go to school there. Powers is asked repeatedly to come to the Metro. So I hear, and they keep getting shot down. They have about 750 kids in their building. They're very centrally located, and I think they would be a great asset, and it would almost be back of half of the old Big Nine together with Clio, Kersley Creek, Powers, and Flushing.
And also,
And Owasso, thank you, I forgot about Owasso. So, there's other schools that I think have been mentioned, I'll leave. I don't necessarily say we need to run out and give them an invitation, but if we're going to expand it, I think it's someone that should be looked at very, very carefully. It's a very well-run organization, and you know, the days of Powers being accused of recruiting, anybody with school of choice right now can recruit. We're all, you know, we can all do that very easily. So, you know, I think some of that needs to be left in the past. I think they're a good location. Last thing, before we get to the end of this, and I don't know if I'm maybe first or last, one of our past students passed away over the weekend, Cameron Hill. I'd like our board, before we end our meeting, to have a little moment of silence. Good kid, good family, and I'd just like us to have a moment of silence. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jan. Anyone else?
I want to make sure that we acknowledge Shane Shoemaker's contributions to the breast cancer, the cancer awareness.
And also want to thank Michelle and Amy for coming tonight and for bringing those two wonderful students. Really appreciate that. And Patty?
Yes.
Patty,
Yep.
too.
She's the secretary.
Yes, didn't want to forget her. And thanks to all of you sitting around the table. Thanks to the administrators. Thanks to our audience for taking the time. Appreciate it very much. And with that, we have the need to go into closed session for the purposes of negotiation and exempt material. I need a motion.
So moved. Support.
Brian and Mike. Move that the board meet in closed session under 8C and 8H of the Open Meetings Act to discuss the negotiations and collective bargaining and material exempt from public discussion by state statute. Any comments or questions? Joan, could you do roll call, please?
Lorraine,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Stacy,
Yes.
Tony,
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. We will go into closed session. Return in 5 minutes.
I will say Mike was service guy, but it was hot. And the taste is there was a taste of water for them, so they could be cool and drink.
He's a gem.
He is amazing.
Yeah, he's a gem.
Seriously, we get
Oh, for sure.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Every school.